Hi, I'm Anne-Marie Mediwake, and I'm here with Lindsey Deluce and Kelsey McEwen. Welcome to CTV Your Morning, the podcast.
This week, we look at a groundbreaking new test that could detect cancer years earlier and change how we fight it in Canada.
Plus, stuck on the tarmac for years. We'll tell you about the legal battle keeping a Russian cargo jet stuck at Toronto's Pearson Airport.
Thank you for joining us today. And remember to start your day with us live weekdays from 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern, 7 to 10 a.m. Atlantic on CTV CTV News Channel, or on your CTV News app. If there's one thing Lilly Singh knows how to do, besides being a YouTube icon and a best-selling author, and then she was a late-night trailblazer, it is representing every generation at once.
She is back as the host on the second season of Battle of the Generations, where boomers, Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z, or Gen Z, however you say it, go head-to-head to prove who actually has the most pop culture knowledge.
And we had a chance to chat with her about the show and her new role as co-owner and Chief Hype Officer of Toronto's WNBA team, the Toronto Tempo.
I would rather be nowhere else than in my hometown of Toronto talking about the show I love so much.
Oh my gosh, why do you love it?
It's so fun. It's truly one of the most fun things I do. I mean, it's the Gen Z, millennial, Gen X, boomer battling it out, and they are serious about it.
Serious.
No one is just showing up casually. It's do or die for these people. They are serious about trivia.
Do you talk to the contestants? Like, what kind of prep are they doing leading up to
I mean,
this?
they're studying for like months. And now what's cool about season 2 actually is there's a live audience, which we didn't have in season 1. So their family and friends are in the audience. So the stakes are just so high. The energy is so good. And they're so excited to be there.
That's awesome.
I'm like choking. They're so excited to be there. They get to win up to $25,000. It's really fun.
That's awesome. I was going to ask you, what's new about season 2? So we've got a live audience.
Yes.
Do you have any notable moments that you can share with us?
Oh, I mean, let's just say in season 1, there was a lot of really great characters. In season 2, there are some bigger characters. There are people that have been trivia champs for like 20 plus years that are like this. No, people that have won thousands of other competitions that are like, it's pretty crazy. There are some notable moments. I don't want to give too much away.
No, don't.
But I will say the premiere tonight, 10 p.m. on CTV, has possibly a roster of some of the biggest characters we've had this season.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, that's
absolutely
exciting. So, like, we know we've got contestants from all different generations. You mentioned Gen Z, Gen Z, whatever you want to say, boomers, millennials.
Okay, Canadian Gen Z, let's go.
I'm just throwing it in there. What surprises you most about people coming from different age ranges and different backgrounds as they do this quiz show?
Yeah, it's fascinating. I think the generations that grew up with social media, it's fascinating how they learn things. Because a Gen Z contestant will be like, never seen this movie, don't even know these people, but I saw this 2-second clip on TikTok that is about this and they're a meme about it, so I guess this is the answer, and then they're right.
That's amazing.
So it's pretty crazy, but I will say I've learned not to put anyone in a box because there's a lot of Gen X and boomers that come through and they know a lot about Gen Z and millennials, so.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been really impressed.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You mentioned big names, big characters this season, as well with a Music Stars charity episode.
Yes, absolutely.
Coming up this summer. So we've got Juno Award winner Molly Johnson, Bare Naked Ladies drummer Tyler Stewart. So when you get a big star like this, do you up the ante or do you treat them the same as everybody?
Oh no, I treat them the same. If anything, I'm tougher on them.
Really?
Honestly, because they're used to the spotlight, they're so good at playing towards the camera. So I'm like, I'm gonna make this even more challenging. That episode, I cannot wait till it airs. That one is a really, really good one.
That's awesome.
The tension gets real high there.
It's very cool. We've had some members, just as like a side note, we've had some members of our team work like behind the scenes on the show, and they come back just raving about the experience.
Well, let me just take a second to say that production crew on Battle of the Generations, all respect and praise to them. They are such a great crew. From the executives to the camera operators to the PAs to the craft services people, everyone is so lovely and I have so much respect and love for them. They make that show what it is.
That's awesome. Can I also just point out the colors you're wearing today because you are a busy woman. It was also recently announced you are now part owner and CHO, Chief Hype Officer,
yes,
for the Toronto Tempo.
Absolutely.
What is a Chief Hype Officer?
So clearly it is really early in the morning. I told you I'm pretty sleep deprived, but you see my level of energy I still have?
Yeah.
This is just me across the board. Chief Hype Officer, my job is gonna be to just do the most at these games. I wanna lead the fan chants. I wanna bring cool people to the games. I wanna connect the audience to the players. I just wanna let it be known this is gonna be the coolest team ever. It's a Canadian team, it's a Toronto Tempo. Watch this space, 2026, baby.
This is so awesome. So
Yeah.
you're going to be here, obviously, hyping people up.
I plan to spend all of my money flying back and forth. That's absolutely correct. So if anyone's watching this and has some sort of aircraft they would like to sponsor me with, please
Hit you up.
I will be flying back and forth a lot.
Oh my gosh, well, we're very excited. Lilly Singh, there's
you.
no one better for the job
Yes.
for both the Toronto Tempo and for Battle of the Generations.
10 p.m. tonight, CTV, next day on Crave. Let's go, baby. Battle of the Generation Season 2.
Amazing. You just said everything that I was supposed to
Oh,
say.
did I take your job? I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I can't help myself. I can't help myself.
It was great. You're hyping everywhere.
Talking points, give them to me.
Awesome. You nailed it. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for being here. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you.
Yeah.
Loblaw is warning consumers prices will likely surge on most tariff-hit food items. The company says it limited the number of items affected by tariffs since the trade war started. But as its pre-tariff inventory starts to run low, that number could surge in coming weeks. For a closer look at these price increases, I'm joined this morning by Bruce Winter, retail expert. Great to have you here.
Thanks for having me on, Anne-Marie.
All right, so Loblaw is warning there's going to be price increases coming to as many as 3,000 to 6,000 items in the coming weeks. I think everybody's wondering what's going to be affected. So can you walk through some of these items for us?
Yeah, I think we're at the stage now where some of the packaged goods items are going to be affected. So, you know, the produce and the vegetables was probably affected right away because you can't inventory those kind of products. But
Yeah.
Loblaw, like other grocers, inventoried a number of packaged goods, sort of the stuff in the middle of the grocer. And the inventory is depleted now. So the new shipments coming in are going to be subject to some of the countermeasures, the counter tariffs the Canadian government put in place. And that's where you're going to see some of the increases.
And that I'm just thinking things like cereals, boxed pastas, soups, things like that.
Yeah, things like that, health and beauty aids, you know, those kind of products.
How much of an increase are we talking about?
It's hard to really know. I mean, technically, you know, the product increase is going to be 25% from a cost perspective. Obviously, Loblaw and other folks are going to try to negotiate with suppliers. The other thing that Loblaw has done and others have done is try to change source to buy from Canadian to avoid this scenario, or buy from other countries outside the U.S. to avoid this scenario. But there are some items you just can't get from other spots.
Well, last month, Loblaw released its annual food inflation report, and in it, it showed a price increase on things like meat, pork, pork, chicken, and beef, plus there was coffee on that list, eggs, and nuts. How much of that increase is because of the trade war?
Not really. It's not really related to that as far as I know. Each of those industries has sort of a unique situation that usually involves supply and demand. And there could be everything from, you know, geopolitical issues to weather patterns that have maybe tightened up supply, right? So each category has its own story. But really, I think what we're seeing now over the next several weeks are going to be the real change caused by the countermeasures the government's put in place.
Obviously, Loblaw isn't the only chain that sells groceries in this country, so should we expect to see other grocery stores raise their prices around the same time and by the same amount?
I would expect so. You know, I think that all the grocers are in the same boat. It's really an industry issue because you're importing the same kind of product from the U.S., right? So it's going to be probably across the board with all grocers.
And it just leads to more tough decisions for families of what to put in the cart and what to leave on the shelves. You know, if people are thinking ahead, they're trying to plan ahead, they've got summer coming up, when can we expect to see the full effect of tariffs on food items?
It sounds like over the next several weeks is going to, you know, several weeks, several months. That assumes that things don't escalate further, right? Which they could. Hopefully they don't. Hopefully President or Prime Minister Carney has a meeting with Prime Minister Trump and negotiates something in the next few weeks. But, you know, we're probably going to see sort of a steady state here in the next, you know, month or two in terms of what prices is going to look like. And I think some retailers like Loblaw have tried to give consumers a choice by using a T to show which items are affected so that they can try to maneuver around the increased priced items.
Obviously, Bruce, you follow this closely. You were expecting price increases to come because you can't, you know, put tariffs on something and then not change the price and still survive as a business. But what are you watching for in the next couple of weeks?
I'm really watching for the consumer reaction. I'm really all on social media and in the media. I'm also watching for how the grocers respond to this and how they signal it, what tools they use to communicate with consumers. I mean, Loblaws has been pretty transparent about it, which is good. Looking to see if other folks are going to be transparent about what's happening too.
Well, cancer is the leading cause of death in this country. Nearly 2 in 5 Canadians will be diagnosed with cancer in their lifetime. Unbelievable stat, isn't it? And about 1 in 4 people will die from it. ovarian cancer in particular has a 5-year survival rate of about 45%. Carrie Parslow is the founder of Lawsuits Charity, is one of the very few Canadians ever diagnosed with stage 0 ovarian cancer. Being diagnosed with stage 0, it's rare, right? Her cancer was caught early thanks to genetic testing. Dr. Raymond Kim is the director of cancer genetics and early detection at Princess Margaret Cancer Centre, where he is leading the research on a blood test that could detect cancer years before symptoms appear. Carrie Parslow and Dr. Raymond Kim are joining me this morning. Good to have you both here.
Thank you for having
I had to
us.
do a double take when I said, 0, because I don't think I've ever said in news stage 0 before, Carrie. Your cancer was found incredibly early. What led you to get testing in the first place?
Yeah, so good question. My aunt passed, unfortunately, from cancer in 2017. And prior to her death, she had done genetic testing, and it was determined that she carried a gene called BRIP1. After her passing, a whole slew of familial testing ensued, and I found out I was a carrier as well. So in consultation with my team at that time, we decided that it would make sense for me to do a preventative surgery, a risk-reducing surgery, in hopes that I wouldn't end up with ovarian cancer. And, I'm actually incredibly fortunate. They caught a stage 0 cancer, so treatable and much better, obviously, long-term prognosis and so on and so forth. Yeah.
My goodness. As a result, did more family members get tested?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and there's
that-
been a handful that have tested positive as well. And my daughter will be tested at some point because she stands a 50% chance of having the gene as well.
Wow. Dr. Kim, you're leading some of the research behind the cell-free DNA test. What is it? Walk us through what it is.
So cell-free DNA are small bits of DNA fragments that are released in the blood when cells turn over very quickly in various different health states, such as pregnancy, inflammation, and also cancer. So when someone is progressing from a healthy state to a cancerous state, like many gene carriers do, then we hypothesize, or we believe, that their cell-free DNA signal starts to change in the body. And that's particularly important for cancers we can't detect, such as ovarian cancer. Like, unlike breast cancer, there isn't a mammogram or breast imaging that is equivalent in ovarian cancer. So many different cancers sit in the body very surreptitiously, and developing a blood test that can detect it is what we're all about.
How big of a difference could this make?
Well, I don't want to dream, but I will. I do believe that studying these type of tests in people like Carrie and other gene carriers will lead to other people having a blood test that eventually one day will be part of our routine screening, like any other type of disease. So we can catch as many stage 0s as possible.
How far away do you think that is? I know it's hard for you to say, but...
There are a lot of people and scientists, and we at the Princess Margaret are leading that too, and a lot of companies are in this space too, but I hope within my lifetime and a decade that this type of test will be available to all of us.
Wouldn't that be incredible?
Sleep is a lot more than just rest, and there are new studies showing exactly why sleep is impacting mental health.
Yeah, depending on how many hours we get at night, it can significantly impact the state of our mental health and the choices we can make on a day-to-day basis.
Here's sleep expert Amanda Jewson with more.
We're going to be talking about 2 studies today. The first study we're going to talk about, I was sort of wowed by this. It looked at 85 folks, so 85 people in this sample study. They put them in half. One group, bad night of sleep. One group, a great night of sleep. And they put them under a functional MRI. Okay, so this is an MRI that tells us where brain activity is happening and when. They asked the participants to suppress unwanted memories. The folks that had a great night of sleep were able to activate and deactivate parts of their brain responsible. This is crazy. So the first part is your dorsolateral prefrontal cortex on the right side. This area is responsible for self-regulation and managing of your feelings. We were able to activate that on a good night of sleep. The other part of the brain, the hippocampus, that is resulting in, that helps us either access or not access memories, that was suppressed. So they were able to activate and not activate parts of the brain responsible for not feeling good, those yucky memories that we don't want to think about that are connected to anxiety, depression, most of all PTSD. This is such a significant finding, especially for folks experiencing PTSD.
Well, and then obviously, I bet conversely, the people who didn't sleep couldn't do that.
That's right. They weren't able to do it in the same way.
So that's amazing.
I know.
So let's say you are struggling emotionally because of lack of sleep. What can you do about it? I mean, I appreciate the obvious answer is sleep. But like, what if you can't sleep?
Exactly. Well, okay, so a couple of things. The study's authors highlight REM sleep specifically. I always say REM sleep has the best PR in the world because it's like everyone's talking about REM, but REM, you can't just go to bed and say, I'm going to REM sleep tonight. That's not the way it works.
I don't even know what REM sleep is. Like, how do I do that?
Rapid eye movement. But what we do know, here's what I tell folks. Alcohol and THC, cannabis, specifically used for sleep, can limit your REM sleep. So if you are using those to sleep to fall asleep, it's about time to pull back. And if you're having struggles with that, it's about time to think about cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia.
Okay, so was that the Stanford study? No, because there's another one, right?
There's
about
another
staying
one.
Up late.
Yes.
And how that impacts our sleep as well.
I know. So 2 years ago, I think I was on this program talking about your chronotype. Your chronotype is whether you're a late owl, an early bird. And I said, focus on doing stuff at the time your body wants to. So if you're a late owl, stay up late, do your things. No. Our Stanford study just this year found that, and this sample size is massive, 75,000 people they looked at and found that if you are a late owl and doing things late, staying up late, you are 20 to 40% more likely to experience a mental health episode or a behavioral mental health episode.
That's a huge statistic.
Yeah, it's a massive statistic. And so it really calls into, and the study's author said itself, this really is contrary to the original advice that if we follow our body's natural clock, it's great. Actually, what it looked at is the mind after midnight hypothesis they talk about, that after midnight we're not making good choices. Our ability to regulate, eating, drinking, video games is reduced. And night owls think that they have the cognitive ability. They might feel more energetic. Whereas if I was staying up late and I was trying to make these decisions, my brain would say, listen, you're not functioning, pull back. But if you're a night owl, you don't have that same dialogue. So you do the thing anyway, and it's leading to poor mental health outcomes.
Okay, so how do we take all this information and then apply it to ourselves to live our best life?
Totally. So number one, the study's authors highlighted 1 a.m. as a key time. So go to bed before 1 a.m.
Okay.
That should be easy enough, hopefully. Some people can't. And this is, I've been on this program before talking about delayed sleep phase syndrome. If you're really experiencing a hard time falling asleep, you might need to think about going outside. Sun regulates your body's clock. If you're not finding relief then it's about time to talk to your doctor, maybe talk about a melatonin protocol, and really stick to getting up at the same time, going to bed at the same time.
If I've learned one thing from you, Amanda, over the years, is that it's not normal to have abnormal sleep, so get help if you need it.
100%. I love that. Get a t-shirt.
Yeah. Put it on the t-shirt.
You're listening to Your Morning, the podcast, where we bring you some of the best conversations from our show every week. Join us live on CTV every weekday, 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern, 7 to 10 a.m. Atlantic on CTV CTV News Channel, or on your CTV News app.
A Russian cargo jet has been parked at Toronto's Pearson Airport for so long. I mean, it's practically part of the scenery at this point, right? So people are starting to wonder, when is the departure date?
So here's a little backstory. The plane was seized back in 2023 and has since been tied up in a long and expensive legal battle, which has now reached one of Ontario's highest courts. And then to top it all off, the thing might not even be able to fly anymore.
John Graddick is a lecturer at McGill University's School of Aviation Management. He joined us to help break it down.
I mean, if you've been to Pearson, you most likely have seen this thing, right? I have videos on my phone from like 2 years ago. It has been there since 2022. It was seized by the Canadian government officially in 2023. What is the latest in this legal battle?
Well, I think the Russian airline that owns this airplane really is starting to make some public commentary about, this has been an illegal seizure by the Canadian government, and that they are fighting the transfer of ownership that has been initiated in recent months in the courts. So this is a legal battle at this point in time of who owns this airplane, and there's over $1 million parking charge associated with this airplane already sitting in here since February of 2022. So it's a legal battle at this point in time to get the keys to them to run this airplane. The Russian airline is very upset the fact that people have been going on board this airplane and checking out the mechanics and checking out some of the operating practices of the airplane illegally as far as they're concerned. So it's a battle going on at this point in time.
I want to ask you about, there's $1 million parking charge. Is that serious?
Yeah. So it's over 1,000 days. 1,000 days at $10.65 a day.
So, and then who is that? I mean, where do you send that bill?
Right now, it's going to the Canadian government. It's going. The GTAA is sending that parking bill. Well, it's outstanding. So it's been a question of who's eventually going to pay for that bill.
Yeah, absolutely. Just one of the many storylines here. I want to ask you about what I said off the top. This aircraft has been sitting there for years. It is considered no longer airworthy. So walk us through that.
Yeah, what typically when you park an airplane for an extended period of time, you take measures to protect the systems on board the airplane. These are mechanical parts, of course, and they need to get tested and they need to get worked on. It's like taking your car and just storing it and not even bother doing anything on the oil engine or the transmission. These require constant tuning up and constant working to allow them to be used on any moment's notice. So this airplane has not really moved in 3 years. So there's a lot of mechanical parts and a lot of mechanical components on this airplane, as well as maybe electronics that really need to have a look at before you in fact let this airplane fly. And it has to pass Transport Canada airworthiness requirements. So that's a major hurdle. Again, expensive.
I bet. And there's been no maintenance on this whatsoever. It's just been sitting there.
To the best of my knowledge, no. The engine, usually when you park an airplane for a long period of time, you want to cover at least the engines. And these engines have been open to the elements ever since it's been here since 2022. So who knows what's living in those engines.
So Ottawa's plan was to seize the aircraft, and then deliver it to Ukraine as part of an aid package. But if it can't fly anymore, I mean, what options does the government have if it wins control of the plane in court?
Well, I think, the objective, I think, from the government's perspective is to get this airplane back to the Ukrainians. And so the Ukrainians are going to have to take control of the, airworthiness requirements for this airplane. So we'll need Ukrainian staff. You'll need Ukrainian components. There are no components in Canada that fit this airplane. So there's a need to get parts, equipment, people, test equipment into Toronto to basically get this airplane back into flyable condition. So that's a major investment, and I'm not even sure that this airplane, can be airworthy. And if it cannot be airworthy, I think the only option we have at that point in time is to take it apart and looking for salvage value.
Have you ever rewatched an old movie and thought, oh, that did not age well? Well, our next guest has zeroed in on a specific period through a specific lens, looking not just at movies, but pop culture as a whole and its portrayal of women in the 90s and 2000s. If you were coming of age in that era, the messaging bombarding women and girls is alarming to look back on. And that's exactly what Sophie Gilbert is doing in Girl on Girl. It is a fascinating read about the way women were portrayed back then and the impacts it is having today. Sophie Gilbert is joining us in studio. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
Listen, it is easy to say a movie's just a movie or a magazine photo is just a photo, but the book is exploring so many aspects of pop culture and unpackaging the messages that we may not have realized at the time were bombarding us, especially women in the 90s and 2000s. So what kind of messaging, when you go back through your research, was sort of the headline that women were receiving?
Well, it was exactly this. I think we remember fragments of the era. We remember images. We remember the New York Post headline of like the bimbo summit, the pictures of Britney in Paris. But we don't remember the whole thing as holistic as it was. And what was interesting in my research and what really came through was the idea that for women in the 2000s, sex was power. Sexual power was the most important thing that we could aspire to having. And the messaging was really kind of ubiquitous on that front in movies, in TV, in music. It was just this idea that like this very sexualized and very kind of narrow version of womanhood was everything that we should try to be.
And as your research points out, it was really seen as almost like women were now using it as a tool for themselves.
Yeah, it was very celebratory. It was sort of this post-feminist ideal of like women can be anything we want now as long as we look a certain way, behave a certain way. It was sort of seen as a kind of liberation, I think, but in reality, looking back, that's absolutely not what was happening.
You say there were two women who came up a lot over and over during your research. That is Kate Moss, who I think of as synonymous with that time, and Demi Moore. Why did they come up, and what did you learn from their repeated appearances?
Well, I think Kate came up because she was just so young when she first emerged in the 90s, and she became so synonymous with this kind of wayfish, like very high fashion, very sort of iconic aesthetic. And then Demi, she just, every time I was researching a different period or a different genre, she was kind of there, symbolizing something about womanhood in the time. So she was in movies, obviously. She was in the movie Striptease. I think she was the highest paid actress in Hollywood at the time when she stripped down to a G-string on David Letterman's show. She was nude on the cover of Vanity Fair in this really groundbreaking portrayal of pregnancy. That sort of shifted ideas about what pregnant bodies should look like, how they should be perceived in the world. She also then left Hollywood to raise her kids in a moment when the percentage of women in the American workforce was starting to decline at the first time. So there were all these moments where she sort of collided with history, that really, in which she was sort of this really interesting illumination, I think, for what was happening with women.
You write about Demi Moore's cover for Vanity Fair being a defining moment in time, and it was initially going to be a private photo, which I didn't know this before, for the family, and then Tina Brown, who we've had on the show a couple times, saw it and said, that's the shot. And I had forgotten this, but I do remember some sellers wrapping this in brown paper or hiding it behind other magazines. But you say this is the cover that represented a shift. So what was the shift?
I think it was this shift, I think, from privacy to public, which really happened so much later in the 2000s when it seemed to happen with the sale of Pamela Anderson's sex tape and with the paparazzi real stalking of certain women in the 2000s. The idea that if you were a woman and you were out in public, you were sort of in the public domain. You wouldn't have any say over what happened to you. But the Demi Moore cover, it was just this very kind of fresh 90s feel where the old aesthetic of the 80s and the kind of conservatism of the Reagan era was really replaced by this sort of new, very like eroticized but very enticing aesthetic.
So Sophie, jumping ahead to the 2000s now, and you get into some of the biggest movies of that time, and you write, I'm going to quote this, movies in the aughts hated women. Not all of them, and not equally egregiously, but most. This was the decade of Shallow Hal, Knocked Up, White Chicks, and Bringing Down the House. Women tended to be punchlines or footnotes or both. So what was it like to rewatch these movies with a different lens?
It was really surprising, I think, because I remembered watching them in the era, and I remembered things about them that kind of, you know, tweaked at me during the time, like, oh, that doesn't feel great. But watching them all simultaneously and really, like, feeling steeped in the environment that they were creating, they were so strange. Like, there was just so much negativity towards women and really, like, not much time and space for women at all. But when they were present, they were so heavily sexualized. They were figures of fun. They were scolds. They were really, it was just very, very negative. And there were a lot of things, too, that came up that seemed sort of predictive of so much that happens in our culture now, like non-consensual pornography was taken very lightly, things like that.
And we do see that now. You're seeing this in deep fake sites and things like that.
Absolutely.
You know, it's been a pleasure to talk to you and to dig into some of this research and to sort of put together the pieces of what we're seeing now and tracing it back into history, 90s and the 2000s. Sophie Gilbert, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
A reminder, Sophie Gilbert is the author of Girl on Girl, How Pop Culture Turned a Generation of Women Against Themselves. I don't know if you've thought about it lately, but there are a lot of love songs to choose from. Yeah. But some people say they don't make them like they used to.
And I will always love you. I will always love you.
We're taking a deep dive into love songs now. We're going to explore whether or not musicians like Houston, or people that were writing those ballads still, like Whitney Houston, all those other great ones that you just have to belt out in your car by yourself. So are love tunes dying or evolving? Yeah, there's a poll up right now. You can scan the QR code. Do you have a favorite love song? Either of you?
I do. I have a couple, actually. I love country music, so don't go to my picks just yet. But I love country music. So country music is so much about either love or unrequited love or being broken up with.
Or like drinking whiskey.
Love of the beer. Like, there's a lot of love. But what I really love about this era is the self-love and the idea of, like, celebrating yourself. And this song by Miley Cyrus is my anthem for that.
Oh.
It's a good one. It's good.
So this song, obviously, I love a lot. Just kind of like the taking back your own power. But in terms of country love songs, this song by Kane Brown featuring his wife is like me and my husband.
Are you going to start crying?
I love this song so much.
Your hand fits perfectly in mine, and thank
That's a nice song, Kel.
And we saw him in concert and she was so pregnant. She came up and she sang with him.
That's
It was
nice.
amazing. Anyway,
They're obviously together in real life, right?
yeah, they're married. Yeah.
That is so nice.
So if you want a good love song, I highly recommend country music.
That is true.
So there
Lynn?
you go.
I'm going to throwback.
Oh,
There are a lot to choose from,
okay.
but I chose this one this morning.
Oh, good one, Lynn.
Crank it!
Foreigner, excellent choice.
Wait, keep it going.
Okay, so you're in a room with Drew. This song comes on. Do you dance?
Do we dance?
Or do you do
in like,
this to him?
Lindsay does this by herself.
this is how I attract him across a bar. Yes.
He's so proud.
Yeah, well, he's doing air guitar right along with me on the other
love
side.
it.
Yeah, that's such a good track. I like the full-on like 80s power ballads.
Yes.
They're so good because they build to a crescendo and then boom, you've got the chorus.
So what do you feel? Like, do you feel like there is a love song of 2025 that matches that energy?
Oh no, I'm stuck. I'm stuck in like the 70s. Usually, so I'm surprised I picked an 80s power ballad,
Yeah.
but yeah. What about you?
I love, well, no surprise, I prefer the songs that are all about the pain of lost love. Like, I love the, like, in your pain.
Yeah, I love
like,
it too.
You go dark,
Yeah,
obviously.
but I am married to somebody who's a wonderful optimist. And so we like Shania Twain. Still the one.
It's
I
a good
love
choice.
this song. Good things happen at the lake. That's a slogan from one of the characters in our next novel. Fans of best-selling author Carly Fortune will be thrilled to find out she is taking readers back to the sun-soaked docks of Barry's Bay, where it all began. And back to the brothers that captured readers' hearts in her debut novel. One Golden Summer is her fourth book, and it's featuring some familiar faces and some new ones as well. Carly Fortune is back in our studio this morning. Welcome back. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Listen, we had to protect these copies. These go missing. In fact, mine went missing, and I've been interrogating everybody I know. Like, do you have my copy? Everybody wants their hands on this one. Give us the spoiler-free elevator pitch of this fourth book.
Yeah, so this is about Alice. This is a new character who spent one amazing summer at the lake when she was 17, and it's where she fell in love with photography. She took one photo of 3 teenagers in a yellow boat that changed her life. It was the first photo she sold. And now she's kind of stuck professionally as a photographer. And when her grandmother falls and breaks her hip, she needs surgery. She decides to take her grandmother back to the lake to recover. And so she's looking for peace and quiet, but then she hears the roar of a familiar yellow boat's motor. And the man driving it is none other than Charlie Florek, who's one of the boys who is in her photograph, and he's one of the characters from my first novel, Every Summer After.
Yeah. Are you internally screaming yet? You should be internally screaming. So there's so many people fell in love with the characters from your first book. As a reader, it is so satisfying to see where it has led them and to bring back and to visit them, to come back to this lake.
Thank you.
What made you want to return to the setting of book 1?
Well, I grew up in Barry's Bay,
Yeah.
so I love it very much. I go back to the lake every summer myself. And when I finished writing Every Summer After, I had Charlie, this character's voice, in my head. I'd written a couple of lines, and then I didn't really have a story for him, so I set it aside. And then readers started demanding a story for him. I had this book signing in Toronto, and 2 women waited to the end of the line for an hour and a half to the signing line, and they said, "We need a happy ending for Charlie. Justice for Charlie."
Oh.
And people would DM me, and so I was like, I knew that I would do it eventually. And so, yeah, when it came time
Charlie's
for book
voice
4.
is being heard.
Yeah.
Listen, you should stay in line for those book signings, by the way, because the authors actually listen. Your book is so great because it's proudly Canadian. Your books have always been set in Canada, and it's one of the charms, I think, that people enjoy about them so much.
Yes.
Did you ever receive any pushback to make it a more generic lake setting?
You know, the first step in publishing is getting an agent. And so when I was talking to different agents, one agent here in Canada said I should set it in the States. And I knew that I wouldn't do that. I've never really vacationed in the States. It wasn't right for me. But when I found my agent, who's based in Los Angeles, and my editor, who's based in New York, they loved the Canadian setting. And it's a character in the book. And I found it's so nice for Canadians to read about home.
Yes.
But people around the world, they love reading about how beautiful the country is. It's like an escape for them as well.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. And I love how you also wrote about the city in one of your books as well, because we've been around these places in Toronto. Let's talk about research. You did spend a lot of time in Barry's Bay growing up. The cottage elements come from very loved and cherished memories that you have. But in this book, one of the characters is a photographer. And there's some medical elements. Yeah. There's a hip replacement, some cardiologists. How did you research those elements in?
Well, my very good friend is a photographer. Her name is Jenna. She works here in Toronto, Anne-Marie Mediwake. And I've known her since I was in my 20s. We worked at our first jobs together, and she always had a camera in her hand, and she helped me with a lot of the technical aspects. And I spoke with another photographer here, Erin Layden, who does beautiful portraits, and I felt like she would have a lot of insight into Alice's character. And I interviewed doctors. I interviewed a physiotherapist who lives in Barry's Bay, Joanne Olson, and I do my research. Yes.
Yeah, of course you do. You can tell all your homework is done. Listen, all of your books have been optioned for screen adaptation, which is amazing. I cannot wait when that happens. And you posted a little something in January, which we've pulled up for everybody to see. So this is from your social media. Year after year. What does this mean? Oh, every year after.
Yeah, so that is the picture from the writer's room for the Every Summer After adaptation, which is a series with Amazon. Yeah. And that is shooting very soon, the first season, which is exciting. Meet Me at the Lake is in development as a film, and it's coming along really beautifully, so I'm excited about that.
Carly, we have had you on this sofa since your very first book came out.
Thank you.
I can remember that interview distinctly because I love the premise of the book, but when you set out to write it, compared to where you are now, what's been the biggest surprise for you?
Oh my gosh! I mean, everything, honestly.
Because you're a busy mom too. You write around
two kids. But I wrote this book the first book for myself. I didn't intend to publish it when I started out. It was a passion project for me. So this has all been wild. I was in Brazil in the fall, in Sao Paulo, and the readers were screaming at the mention of Barry's Bay and Every Summer After. And Barry's Bay is a town of 1,200 people. So to be in Brazil and have people know of this small town in rural Ontario was surreal, completely surreal.
I think you fortunately boosted the tourism back to PEI after your last book.
There's a lot of people going there, yes.
Carly, fortunate, your name is like a prophecy. Great fortune to you. Thanks so much for joining us. And a reminder, this newest novel, You Can't Have Mine, go buy your own, is called One Golden Summer.
Thanks so much for joining the podcast today.
For more great conversations, don't forget to download or hit subscribe to Your Morning, the podcast on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
And of course, we would love for you to watch us live weekday mornings on CTV, CTV News Channel, or on your CTV News app. Start your morning with us.